Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Adapt Performance Podcast. In today's episode, we are joined by Coach Danny Speirs on Instagram. Okay, for those of you that have seen that, it is the Rugby Performance Coach. So he specialises in all things rugby, physical development, and kind of has a really holistic mindset when it comes to developing amateur and semi-pro rugby players. In this episode, we cover a lot of ground, okay? So we go through a lot of different things that I think you're going to find super important and super valuable as well. So we cover some of the lower hanging fruits that we think rugby players should be considering and thinking about, okay? We also go through how to approach speed work, a little bit on robustness and hypertrophy, and finishing up with a little bit of chat around recovery, all right? So without further ado, let's get into the episode. This is me and Danny. Yes, Danny, how's it going, mate? You okay?
Good, mate. Yourself?
I'm well. I'm double parked. I've got a juice in one hand and then I've got a coffee in the other. So I'll be running for a piss probably halfway through. Who knows?
I'm saying coffee's there. Just cracking on, obviously, with the online coaching stuff. It's getting busy. Taking up the majority of my time, but I'm enjoying it. It's good. What about you?
Mate, similar today, actually. Wednesdays are my podcast days. So I try and film or record one, but I also try and do the editing side until next week, actually. So I'm getting somebody in to do the editing side. We had a little chat about that, didn't we?
We did.
So I'm trying to essentially save a little bit of time. You know, I think I've done an okay job with the editing, but I'm probably botching it in a lot of areas that people will just laugh at when they see, you know, too many steps for what it is.
Yeah, of course.
But we'll see, mate. We'll see. So why don't you kick us off, mate? Give us a little bit of an elevator pitch of who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of take it from there, mate.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I guess I'm the Rugby Performance Coach on Instagram. I guess that's his way of explaining it. But ultimately, I help rugby players around the world, amateur and semi-professional, reach their version of high performance. So ultimately, I operate within three pillars, being performance, robustness, and lifestyle. So I'm a really big advocate of when somebody comes to me as an amateur rugby player of, yes, helping them perform on the pitch, but then ultimately as well, helping them perform off it. And yeah, I've been doing that for 2 years, more so in the last kind of like 3 months.
What's kind of inspired the push then? What's been like the, you know what, I want to get this going?
So a bit of a lowdown of the kind of like the last, I guess, 18 months is post-COVID, I opened up my own facility with a couple of guys back in my hometown, and it didn't go to plan. I mean, opening a gym in COVID was never going to be the best idea, but we gave it a go, and yeah, it kind of came crashing down. And then found myself back in Leeds, and I'd always had it kind of running for the last kind of like, I started at the start of COVID, and it was something I never really gave my full into it. It was like almost like a side hustle. And then when I came back to Leeds and I kind of was like twiddling my fingers and stuff, I was like, right, what am I going to do? And I was like, well, ultimately, you know, this is something I've been doing for 2 years. I had a bit of a following at the time. And I was like, I either go all into it now or I don't. So yeah, delved in like head first, and that was probably like June where I went like really into it. I'd been doing it for like 18 months, and this is something I always say to like my partner is that like my friends are saying like, oh, it almost is that kind of like overnight success type thing, but it's not. I've been posting every day for 2 years. It's just that now over the last 6 months, I've really like got into it. So
I can remember like how long have I been following you? Let's say 4, 5, 6 months or something, but it looks like it's been a really quick growth. Like, what kind of growth have you looked like in the past little bit of time? Because it seems like it's been big.
So, in terms of if we're talking followers, from the start of COVID to let's say June this year, 2022, it was probably 12,000 followers, which by all means is like amazing, and I was very happy with that. From June to now, I mean, we're now at 27 followers. So, you know, I've kind of did what I did in the first 18 months in the last 4 months. And there's a lot of things that have happened along the way. Like I hired a business coach in June, and because I really wanted to go for it, and that was the best thing I've ever done.
Is it?
Well, yeah, it could. Sorry, go on.
Is that kind of, is it from a guidance standpoint? Has there been any kind of special, there's never really special secrets, but has there been anything where you're like, fucking hell, that was like a game changer and I never even knew?
not necessarily anything that's a game changer. Like, I'm quite impulsive in nature. Like, I dart about a lot, and I get an idea in my head, and I'm like up at like 1 a.m. and it's just kind of like how I'm built up.
Yeah.
And he's really been like, no, do this. So when I first started with him in June, like rugby's a passion of mine, hence why I've started Rugby Performance Coach. But I love all sports, so I was like, yeah, I want to do this, and he was like, no, you've got this audience, go into this audience. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. And then ultimately, I've been making the content for that specific audience, which is why it's done that.
Yeah.
So it's been nothing that's like specific. Like you said, there's no secret. It's a lot of accountability, a lot of clarity in terms of where it's going, and then just kind of like the basic stuff from like systems and structures. So the best way of explaining it is, I think I've got quite a half decent business mind on me, or at least I thought I did, and then it just so happens I hired a coach and they knew better than me. And it's the same thing that we've all had those athletes who have trained a little bit in the past, and then you start work with them and they're like, oh, well, I do it this way. And I guess I was probably a little bit like that. And he's really, shown me, the wider picture to it. So
that's the thing, isn't it? Like, I think knowledge is always a good thing, but sometimes a little bit of knowledge, when kind of misapplied or you don't have that context, can be quite dangerous and quite, it can hold you back in a lot of ways.
Yeah, 100%. Like pre-mentorship, I'll call it. I was, I guess, a bit of a rabbit in the headlights. I wasn't running a business. It was more of a passion project, side hustle. Whereas, like, fast forward to now, and I'm only 3 months into that, really. I would say it's a business now rather than just something I'm doing on the side. So
that's sick. So tell me a little bit around, I want to get into the athlete side of things, mate. I want to get into the S&C. So you spoke through, you've got performance, robustness, and lifestyle as like your kind of 3 pillars then. Where do you, with the athletes you're currently work with, where do you see the lowest hanging fruit? Where's the easiest gains that you seem to make with a lot of people?
Structure, straight up. Like, so like the journey for when I sign someone up is, we really delve into kind of what their week looks like now. They fill out a kind of onboarding questionnaire where they break down their schedule. And I look at it and I'm like, straight away, it's either nothing, which is why they signed up, or it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum where, they're smashing a lower session the Friday night before playing on a Saturday. And then they're wondering why they're so tired on the Saturday. So 100% the quickest win straight away is providing a structure from a programming perspective, not necessarily the specific individual sessions, but what that kind of week looks like building up to a game. That's where I get the biggest wins, I think, straight up.
Mate, so I was thinking through that question before I asked it. I was like, okay, what's my answer to this going to be? And I literally said structure as well. I was like, it makes sense. It then becomes easy to kind of manage things and see what's working, what's not working. If you do random things, you get random results, and in such a chaotic sport from a playing standpoint, but also a training standpoint, we can't always predict what that session looks like. So we need to just make sure we've got our ducks in a row to prepare for that. That's kind of how I was thinking through it. Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's just, I think what it comes down to as well is that like the athletes I work with who do a little bit too much realise that they don't have to as well. And they realise kind of the performance kind of gains they get from that minimal effective dose rather than trying to fit everything in the week is for what they actually then feel like on the side, because obviously we're in season now for rugby union is massive. And that's the biggest thing for me as well, is that I always say to all the athletes that I work with, because they are predominantly amateur athletes, is that I want to make sure they go onto the pitch on a Saturday or a Sunday and they enjoy it. And the way to enjoy that is by performing better. So structure.
I think it gets really difficult, at least with some of the athletes I've worked with in the past. Like I've worked with some really good players that really want to chase rugby as like their sole thing, like that is their only focus. And then as soon as you start sprinkling in a few of the other little goals, like, I really want to be bigger as well, and I really want to have this, and I really want to have that. And it's kind of like, do you want to be bigger for rugby, or are you somebody that's trying to get bigger and you play a bit of rugby on the side? And that becomes quite an honest conversation you need to have with them. Like, what does success look like for us in this situation? Have you had that as well?
Yeah, so like we'll sometimes get a prop forward who's saying, I really want to improve my max velocity. And I'm like, okay, why? Are you wanting to improve your max velocity because you want to be fast for something else, or Is it because of the pitch? Because I'm telling you now, we can focus our attention somewhere else. And it's times where I do have to have like serious conversation with athletes if, why they're doing it. Because again, it always comes down to what's the main thing for them. If it's just getting fast, just so they can beat the mates in a race, then whatever, that's fine. But I want to make sure they're performing on the pitch. So, and I really, kind of provide them with the evidence straight up to say, this is where I think we should provide our focus our attention. So yeah, I get it all the time, 100%.
Yeah, I think yes. I'm thinking back to I used to work with Sheffield Hallam's rugby team, and they were kind of a mixture. They were social in nature. They loved going out on the piss. Quite a rugby culture in that sense. But then they had a core group of really good players that wanted to chase the actual performance side, and it was like, from a coaching standpoint, it wasn't really even about the sets and the reps. Sometimes it was sitting down and actually saying, well, what do you want out of this? What are you trying to actually develop? Where are you going to find fulfillment? And it was difficult with some of them. One, you have to get them down to actually have a serious conversation with them, which, they're a bunch of lads at the end of the day. It's kind of hard to get them to be serious when you've got a group of 20 around them. But yeah, it's a difficult one.
Yeah. No, I spent a little bit of time at Beckett as well, and it's the same thing. Like, it's, some athletes really want to kick on, and some are just, are there for the enjoyment and social side of it, whilst being a very good rugby player. That's why I think I love working with the athletes that so much compared to maybe what I've done in the past, is that they're coming to me, and if they're coming to me and obviously investing in themselves, then they're very intrinsically motivated to start off with. So it just makes life. So whatever the goal is, like, as long as it's something that I can help them with, I'll help them with, whether it's performance on a rugby pitch or looking a little bit better. You know what I mean? It's still helping them enjoy performance and lifestyle, which is why lifestyle is such a main pillar for me.
That's a really good point we just mentioned there. Like, the fact that they are coming to you, it's not just a free service that the university gives them.
Yeah.
I don't spend all my time on YouTube, but I can remember listening to some Eric Thomas stuff, like the hip hop preacher. And he was speaking through, I would give you this for free because I really enjoy doing it. But if I give you it for free, you're not going to respect it and you're not going to put everything into it. And that is such a true thing,
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to me. And I've seen the same thing as what you just mentioned there.
Yeah. No, it's like, you've been in those environments, as have I, is that terms of, you work with athletes and you just think, God, I wish I was in your position, because what I would do in this environment to get the best out of me. Not all paid athletes have that mentality, and because they've kind of, some of them are just blessed and maybe they don't need to, go into that environment as much as maybe like I would do as a very amateur athlete, very amateur. Yeah. But yeah, so like, people do think, oh, it must be amazing working in, high performance environments and stuff. And it is and it isn't. And it isn't sometimes from the frustrating aspect of, God, I wish I was in your position, because you don't understand how much effort I would give it compared to you. I don't know if you've ever found that as well.
Mate, absolutely. And I think as a coach, we sometimes want more for the athlete than they want for themselves. And that becomes a really challenging thing to kind of navigate, doesn't it? Because if you want to give them a Ferrari, but all they want is my shit Ford Fiesta outside, it can become quite, it just becomes a hard thing to navigate in terms of you wanting to get the most out of them. And I've definitely had that before where, I'm always quite open with this, but, you start to not like working with a certain athlete because you're wasting it. And it becomes a little bit of a thing in your head, and you have to kind of chew through that a little bit. And actually, I've just got to meet them where they're at. And that's probably the most important thing for me.
Yeah, the only flip side of that I have on the paid athlete side is that I'm kind of not afraid to have those conversations in terms of getting rid of someone, even though they're paying me. So if I feel like they are not buying into it, if I feel like they may be wasting my time a little bit in terms of, because like you say, I want to get the best out of them. So if I'm looking on True Coach and I'm seeing that they've not boxed off the last 2 sessions, then I'm ringing them and I'm saying, look, what's happening? And that's ultimately taking my time away from another athlete. So in the past, it is something that, I never used to do, because ultimately it's quite nice seeing that online coaching money hit. But now, as it's built a little bit, I'm not afraid to have those conversations where I say, look, maybe this isn't the right time for you and it's not the right time for me. And 9 times out of 10, that flicks something and they say, no. Like, and they then want to do it even more. It's a weird dynamic.
It It is. I've had that as well. And I think ultimately being able to have those conversations comes from you being comfortable in your financial situation is a big one, isn't
Yeah,
it?
definitely. Yeah,
And that kind of feeds into where I think a lot of professional sport and university sport is really kind of backwards, because sometimes you get S&C coaches like me and you making decisions not based on what's right for the athlete or the performance, but based on me pleasing head of sport who I haven't seen in the gym for 3 years.
yeah,
It
yeah,
becomes really difficult, and it's like, well, where are we actually heading with this? It's challenging.
yeah. No, it's an interesting dynamic, and it's one that like there's carryovers from both sides and both environments. That like if I was to go back into performance sport, there's a lot I would take from the conversations I've had with athletes who are paying me versus athletes who are being paid to be there. So it's a learning curve on both sides, definitely.
Do you see pro sport or full time sport in your future, or are you happy with where you are and where things are going?
It's got to be the right job, which is something that like I'm really happy the fact that I can say that now is that like whereas like maybe when I finished my master's degree and we've all been there, you're literally just applying for any job. It's like, yeah, I'll move to Timbuktu for
I was about to say, a
yeah,
graduate assistant S&C coach at Aberdeen. Fuck,
and
I
you're
don't
like,
want to
yeah,
go to
I'll go,
Aberdeen.
and you're like, yeah, I'll go.
Yeah.
But like, whereas like now I'm in this really good position where if the right role was to come up, yes, I would jump in because ultimately, like we were speaking a little bit before. I've got a family now. We're quite settled where we are. And there's not many places where, as a family, we would move, which is a really nice position to be in now, and which is why like having this business is it's not just freedom, just from like because we were just saying before, like it can get a bit boring at times being at home programming, and I miss that coaching side, but I'm not prepared to move my family to like you say Aberdeen or or
I've never
wherever.
been. It could be.
And it might be a
could be
nice
sick,
place. I
mate.
don't know. It might be a nice
Yeah.
place, but yeah, it's yes, potentially, but it's got to be for the right reasons and the right job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Nice. So with one of the things I was thinking about before this chat is speed work. Then where does speed work sit within your programming for rugby players? Because that's it's probably one of the more difficult things that you have to try and work with online from my perspective. How are you kind of approaching that topic and yeah, just how are you going about it?
9 out of the 10 athletes that I work with are probably with me because they want to get faster, and I don't know whether that's because of the content that I put out or because it's a bit of a passion project of mine as well. But ultimately, with amateur rugby players, and I'm going to speak very from an amateur perspective right now, and semi-professional. It's a lot of it is acceleration, so it's literally just acceleration, acceleration, acceleration. Don't really touch on that much max velocity. We'll do some like longer distance work, but I don't focus much of my attention on there. So in terms of the process of how it looks is from a testing perspective, when we get an online client on board, we'll get them to film their sprints and we'll do 10 meter, 20 meter. I then take that into the Binary Sports app and I will look at it from a very technical aspect. So, and give them specific feedback on positionings and postures and stuff. From then a programming perspective, we will get an acceleration session in potentially on a Wednesday, depending on what their training week looks like. I'm thinking from a Tuesday, Thursday training split, which is what most amateur clubs do. And yeah, and the way, do you want me to go into detail kind of like how I structure my sessions or?
Let's do it, mate. I'm curious. Yeah.
So from an amateur perspective, we'll go pre-ab. So that will look very specific to kind of what kind of niggles they've got, and most of them do. We'll then obviously go into just a general prep work, a potentiation work, where we'll get some form of just like, jumps in just to fire up that neuromuscular system. And then we'll spend a big chunk of the session then working on postures and positions. I get them to film everything where they can and then send it to me. And then we have monthly check-ins, and that's where it's an opportunity where I then get the video of them up, and then I'm able to then coach in terms of, maybe we need to be a little bit lower here, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll then get what I call in play. So we'll then actually get some sprint stimulus in there. So I really like how Les Spellman approaches it in terms of there's 3 buckets: physical, technical, and stimulus. With the athletes that I work with, the physical aspect is taken care of to some aspect. The technical and the stimulus never is.
Yeah.
So as long as I'm topping up those buckets, technical, stimulus, then we should then get faster over a 12-week period, let's say.
So are you like giving them specific kind of drills to target those two things, and particularly when it comes to the technical aspect? So do you use a lot of like wall drives? Is it that type of thing? Is that kind of where you go?
Yeah, so we'll do. We'll progress through the A series, and we'll progress through some form of like standard wall drills into 3 counts, 10 counts, etc. Load and drives. So we'll tend to focus on very much like projection work for the first like block, working with someone who's wanting to develop speed. So from a drill perspective, it'll look more like wall load and drives with the A series, and then we'll just do a lot of like projections in terms of literally just that first step and get them to feel that, get them to feel that kind of like force going into the ground and punching that knee forward. And like anything, we just start really, really short and just build it up to long. Try and keep it simple.
Do you have like a like volume guidelines in terms of what you try and approach? Do you start at the lower end and then build to what are those numbers you kind of operate between? Do you have those, or is it kind of done by feel?
No, it is. It's a bit of both, to be honest with you. Like, we'll sometimes get like an athlete who's never done any speed work whatsoever. So ultimately getting them to do, 100 meter plus of high velocity work is just, we avoid it. So from a projection standpoint with that first block, it is quite short in nature, where we'll do literally just kind of like, let's say, I don't know, a few sets of just initial projections. Then we'll build that into just something like a reactive, like 5 meter, 10 meter acceleration around a total volume of around 50 to 60 meters, really short, and then build that up as the weeks go on. And then hopefully become a little bit more robust to the load. And that's just, we're always cautious, because ultimately I don't know the athletes, and they might say, "Oh, I've done loads of speed work," but have they or not? And yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, if I'm exposing them to 150 meters of high velocity speed work on a Wednesday, something's going to go wrong. So I'm always cautious, definitely.
Have you done much in terms of, because this is, just going back to the first point that we mentioned around structure, and that's kind of our role, isn't it? To look at the week and be like, right, there's an opportunity to get some high quality speed work. I would say 50% of the people that I have that are trying to get faster, we try and get it done pre-rugby if we can. Try and treat that as a little bit of a get to the field 30 minutes before, long warm up, and get 10 reps of 10 meter sprints or whatever. Is that something you've played around with much, or is it something that?
Yeah, it comes down to time. Like, so all of my athletes are working full time, and then they might start training, at 7. So, for then finishing work at 5, getting home, getting changed, or whatever they have to do. When I've played around with it, the adherence probably goes down a little bit, which is why I then move it to the Wednesday and have it as a standalone session. That's the only reason why. Like, ideally, like, it would be nice to potentially get it in on the Tuesday, like you say, and make that day really hard, and have Wednesday as a recovery and regeneration day to take us into the Thursday, which is usually like our potentiation day for the Saturday.
Yeah,
but it just comes down to time.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those, isn't it? You've got like this gold standard of in your mind of thinking, well, what would I, if it was a clean slate and it was like we could do anything we wanted? What is that thing? And to be fair, I have a few athletes where we can do that, just because the students and,
Yeah.
Mate, I remember when I was a student, like I wouldn't go to strength and conditioning lectures because I wanted to go and train arms. Like, it was so mad, but like you can do what you want. But, we have a few where I can treat it as a gold standard, and then it just becomes a little bit of kind of trial and error, and then just watering it down and pulling back to what is the most essential thing.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. Like, I think we all, as coaches, we all have that ideal structure in our head of what we want the week to look like. And then I think we all start with that. And then as we learn more about the athlete, as we onboard them, it literally is okay, that moves to there. Maybe we get rid of that, and, you move things around that way. But I think that's a good point. I think as a coach, having some form of, right, this is how I think the week should look like based on my philosophy or whatever. And then building out from that, I think, is really important.
Hi guys, I'm just going to take a brief break in today's podcast to talk to you about the Adapt online strength and conditioning coaching service. At Adapt, we put the athlete first and make sure that the whole program is set up around them, their goals, their sport, and their lifestyle to achieve the best possible performances. Our aim is to deliver an elite level coaching experience that typically isn't always commercially available if not part of a professional club or performance pathway system. We communicate with our athletes on a weekly and sometimes daily basis, making changes in technique and making alterations to the program based on how you're performing on any given day. We also bring in experts from psychologists, nutritionists and physiotherapists for online educational workshops to make sure we are giving you all the tools necessary to excel in your sport. So if you're looking to take your physicality to the next level and want to invest in yourself, head over to the website at adaptstrength.co.uk for more information, including some success stories of our current athletes, or drop me a message to set up a chat to discuss the options. Hope you're enjoying today's podcast, so let's get back to it. Do you use, so you said around like your Thursday would be like your primer or your potentiation type session. How does that kind of look for you? What are you kind of putting in there usually?
So again, it relates to the specific goal. So let's say if I've got an athlete who is speed based, for example, we'll do one or two things. We'll either do Olympic lifting derivatives, depending on how well trained they are as an athlete, what their training history is. Or we'll do some actual like Olympic lifting, very much like hand cleans. We won't go into like full power cleans, but hand clean base. And I like that from an acceleration standpoint anyway. We'll then do some like sled work. We'll then do some jumps. If they're like horizontal jumps and stuff like that. So it's a potentiation day for the Saturday, but then it also links into what we're trying to do in terms of supporting their acceleration work. But then on the flip side of that, if I have someone who's kind of very low training history, then it might literally be as simple as some jumps, maybe even some form of like lifting there, a little bit of pre-ab work. So it chops and changes, but ultimately what I want to do, and it's the main thing, is getting the athlete coming out of that session feeling good.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff that I start to learn as time goes on of what they enjoy to do. So if I'm programming hand cleans and my athlete says to me, I hate these, then I'm going to stop putting them in because it's not doing what we want it to do, which is ultimately getting feeling good, fire up that neuromuscular system in relation to the Saturday game.
And that's that whole point there is so important because I can remember seeing a discussion on, it would have been Instagram between two coaches, and they were speaking through other coaches that just send templates, from an online standpoint. I'm like, how does that work? Like, maybe I've got the most awkward and vocal athletes in the world that say, I don't like this, I don't like that, but which is a good thing because they're vocal about it and they trust me to say those things. But I'm like, how in the world can you run, a group of athletes and not be tweaking things? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't see how that can work.
Yeah, and part of the onboarding again is they receive a document off me like a welcome pack, and I outline straight away expectations, and one of the expectations is communication, and say if something's not right within your program, let me know, because then I can adapt it to fit your needs and your likes and your wants, because obviously we've got an idea of what they should be doing, but then I've also got to think from an adherence point of view as well, is that as long as they're doing something that's moving the needle forward, then we're good. Like, they're improving. It doesn't have to be what I think's the best thing.
Well, it's the same as like hill sprints and stuff like that. We know the benefits of using hill sprints and sleds and all those things. I can remember programming them a while ago, and it was this athlete that wasn't as vocal with things, programmed them for maybe 2 blocks. And he just never told me that he wasn't doing them on a hill, And I'm like, well, if you would have told me from day one, we would have figured out a way and we could have kind of talked through those things. But yeah, that's another point actually. Do you use like hill sprints and kind of resisted sled work? Is that part of your program usually, or?
Yeah, so resisted sled work is, and then hill sprints is, to be honest with you, is something I've started messing around with a little bit. Again, going back to like Les Spellman's work, he's a big advocate for like hill sprints due to the fact that the eccentric load is very low and you can get quite a bit in, and the stimulus is great, and it's not that much, it's not taxing. So it's something that I've played around with myself personally. Like, we've anyone that's from around Leeds will know obviously Round Day and the hill there. It's like infamous with Leeds Rhinos as well. Like every year we go up, but they do it from more of a condition perspective. and kind of like messing around with that in terms of then how I feel the next day. And yeah, so it's something I've started to play around with. Sled work definitely is something that we include. So we might include that as part of like either a Monday session, first day back, which again for me is that I see that Monday session as a potentiation session. So if they enjoy doing those high velocity power based stuff, then we'll include that. And then on a Thursday as well, from a load perspective, we'll go quite heavy for acceleration at the start. So when I'm working on projection, we'll go very heavy, kind of like 70% body weight. And then just as the weeks go on, as we build out in length in terms of speed, we'll reduce the load in terms of what they're, 60%, 50%, 40%, etc.
I'm guessing with that, just for anybody that may be using sleds or considering using sleds, I'm guessing you're using like your 70% body weight as kind of a start point and then just eyeballing it a little bit and seeing the speed. Just because I've done it before where you program sled, you're like, right, we're doing 70%, but the sled surface might be super, slick, and it might not feel like the way we want it to look, So are you eyeballing that, or how are you kind of going through the load selection process?
So again, like I get my athletes to film it, and then it comes down to what am I wanting to achieve. So for example, like the reason I like heavy sleds from a projection standpoint is literally you've got to drive to get it moving. You've got to drive into the ground, and you've got to have that piston-like action to get back up if you want to try and move it fast. If I see my athletes, I don't know, kicking the heels back up as they're doing it to try and get it moving, then I'll either try and coach them out of it as I can, or just get rid because it's not doing the thing that I want it to do. Because I see as well, like in that kind of like projection and 5 to 10 meter acceleration phase, is that I use sleds from a technical standpoint as well, not just from a physical stimulus. And that's something that I look at to dictate the loads that I then use. So again, I've got an idea of a structure in my head is that ideally I would like to go down in terms of percentage body weight, but yeah, it depends on what the athlete's looking like as they're doing it.
It's true what you say there. Like it definitely is an opportunity because you can make it as slow as you want, and if you can't do it slow, your chances of you being able to do it fast is going to be limited. And I use that in the same way a lot of the time. Super heavy stuff, it just gives you an opportunity to think about, right, where is my knee? Where does it need to go? Am I trying to knee somebody in the bollocks to get a really high knee drive? Those types of things. And I try and keep them in almost year round, to be honest with you. I quite like that as a stimulus. I think as soon as you're used to doing it, well, even if you're not used to doing it, I don't think it takes a lot out of you. Like you said, there's not a huge eccentric demand in it anyway. But yeah, I like to keep them in and just adjust reps. I've tried contrasting them, so going from heavy sled work into unresisted, just to see if we can get some really nice carryover of technique work, but you also get that potentiation side as well.
Yeah, no, that's nice. I've not explored that, to be fair. I'll give it a go, but yeah, like you say, it's they are good to have, and from a rugby standpoint as well. I did a post last night on kind of like scrum strength and talking about that horizontal force production, but I think it also carries over to all positions when we think about like the breakdown and stuff, and having that horizontal force production capabilities and acceleration capabilities going into contact, and that is 1 to 15 or 1 to 13 if you obviously play in league. I think it has a role in everyone's program.
Yeah, for sure. We're, I guess, I think I probably know the answer with this a little bit. Like, how much does like bodybuilding and your like traditional hypertrophy pump work kind of come into your program? Does it? I'm guessing it depends for one, but then like, does it have much of a focus?
Yeah. So again, it does depend on obviously the individual. Ultimately, what we'll try and do is kind of expose them to some, if they need it, some volume work on the Monday from an upper standpoint. And then if we need to get any higher volume stuff in, then we'll attach it onto in unilateral work on, let's say, the Tuesday in terms of like, if we wanted to build like mass or muscle mass. But so it fits in. It fits in more from, I would say, like a robuster standpoint for the majority. That I don't have that many athletes that come to me saying they want to get bigger, to be honest with you, and I don't know if that's just like an amateur or semi-professional thing. I don't know. Some of them should be. Like when we look at kind of like their mass makeup, etc., versus the standard they want to be playing at, then yeah, they should. But we fit it in, and if we fit it in, it's just kind of fit it in on that Monday and Tuesday, depending on what their week looks like.
And I'm guessing for you then, is that like, well, I suppose there's loads of benefits to getting it in, but is it kind of just building upper body armor? Is that like the standpoint of protect the skeleton?
From an upper body standpoint, it's literally that. It's build the armor. From a lower body standpoint, there might be some deficits in terms of what we need from, I don't know, like an acceleration standpoint, kind of like, is glute cross-sectional area in a position that we want to then have it build the strength that we want to then have that acceleration output. 9 times out of 10 with amateur athletes, it's not. Mm-hmm. So we might do a lot of kind of like targeted glute high volume work. Mm-hmm. Again, talking from a very amateur and semi-professional standpoint, is because they've never done it in the past, and it's another quick win in terms of what they're wanting to achieve.
Yeah. I think one of the things that is probably understated in that regard, we're speaking through hypertrophy, so we're thinking about trying to add muscle tissue, and ultimately there needs to be an element of energy surplus with that as well, which kind of feeds into what you're speaking through with your lifestyle and your nutrition, making sure that those types of things are on point. And I can remember there was a time when I was at Hallam, we were all kind of going through our UK SEA process, and they absolutely grill you on your case study. So you present 10 minutes and they just hammer you at the end, and they're really brutal, they're really horrible, they'll try and make you cry, whatever. And I can remember one of the lads at the assessment day saying, last time I came in, I had a rugby guy, and he was in a hypertrophy block. And the simple question that the guy asked me at the end is, okay, he was in a hypertrophy block, so you're trying to put muscle mass on him. Yep. Okay. Well, what was the measure? Did you weigh him? Did he get heavier or not? And he's like, oh shit. And ultimately it does kind of come down to that. Like, if you're not adding mass at one point or another, there's something in that equation that isn't quite there.
Yeah. I can't remember what I had for my case study. I had a woman and she was lovely. I had the complete opposite experience to what everyone else has had.
Mate, I did. I can remember, what was his name now? I'm going to butcher it. That'll come to me. It was it's gone, but I had netball for my case study. So it's university level netball player. And it doesn't matter what you program for netball players at uni, they will just put 40 kilo on the bar. If it's 10 sets of 10 on a squat, or it's 3 sets of 3, 40 kilo, it's like a curse. They won't go above it. And, I was really kind of honest in my case study, saying it wasn't perfect in a lot of ways. Anything was better than nothing for these girls. And he's like, you know what? I've worked in netball. That's fine. And I was like, look, I was buzzing as well. I do think sometimes there's a little bit of a luck of the draw with the assessors.
Yeah. So like I know we're going off topic a little bit, but my case study, I can't remember what her name was. I did mine on a academy footballer. I was at Rugby United at the time, so I kind of like everything in black and white. And it was at the end of it, she asked me a few questions, and it was like, yeah, sound. And then I can remember getting to my speed and plyo component and just being absolutely like hammered and being like a rabbit in the headlights and being like, and I just knew at that point I'd failed. But it is luck of the draw, like you say.
Yeah, it's absolutely luck of the draw. And we are going off topic. I think we could probably speak about this for a few hours as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Going back to your rugby thing, one of the things you kind of mentioned before was around robustness then. So speak to me about robustness, what that kind of means for you from a rugby standpoint and how you approach that.
So from the athletes that I work with, it's two things. It's being able to get through the training week without breaking down, and then being able to get to the game without breaking down. The experience that I've had with the athlete from an amateur and semi-professional standpoint is that they just have so many like little niggles and stuff, and they kind of think that's just kind of like acceptable. And I know that rugby's the sport that it is, and if we think we're never going to get injured, then we're being a bit like oblivious to the facts. But from an amateur standpoint, everyone's injured, like everyone's broken. So for me, it's just getting athletes to a point where they can get through a season pain-free. And that goes back to the enjoyment side of it. There's nothing worse than playing on a Saturday, kind of gritting your teeth a little bit, and then getting to the Sunday and then, feeling like shit.
And you can't pick up your kid.
Literally, yeah. It comes down to that enjoyment thing. And, athletes come to me like, yeah, I've got this niggle. And I'm like, that's not normal. Like, we should be, we should be well, we shouldn't be, but injuries are part and parcel of rugby.
Yeah.
But not your whole body just hurting. So when I look at it from a coaching standpoint and as a pillar, it's allowing athletes to play and train pain free. And the way that we do that, the first thing, it goes back to the first thing we said at the start of this podcast, is structure. It's providing them with a structure where they can move the needle forward in the week, get to the Saturday, feel good whilst they play, have some targeted recovery and regeneration work, which I'm sure we can talk about in a bit. And then, just keeping them in one piece, I guess.
I found this quite a lot with rugby, is because the niggles happen, fairly frequently. If you've got them in on a Thursday or a Friday and they played on a Wednesday, if it was like the book side of things, they're going to be a little bit sore in areas. And one of the things that I found just super important is, you've got your plan A. Okay, well, what is plan B? If you can't overhead press for whatever reason, can we move to a landmine? Can we water down that exercise? And you just keep going until you're at a point where you're still getting something done that's productive, because, otherwise it's going to be a really long season, and that strength is such a positive thing. If you completely toss it off when you get a little bit of a niggle, it's going to bite you in the ass in the long term.
Yeah, no, that's why, again, it comes down to planning and prep, isn't it? In terms of we'll have athletes who will have like a block laid out for them in relation to the games they've got. And then, we've got one athlete on Saturday who's taken quite a bad knock. They've been and seen a physio. They know they can train, but okay, let's scrap this week. Let's maybe just get some low stuff in, get you moving again, and then we'll move forward again. So that's why it comes down to not being too romantic about your planning and your programming. Like, it's okay to throw it out the window one week, even though it's going to mess up with your periodization strategy, and focus on the individual rather than, your ideas and philosophy.
That's periodization for rugby. If you kind of had to break that down, then how you look at it, is it as simple as off-season, pre-season, in-season, or do you try and break up the individual blocks?
So Ben Jones at Leeds Rhinos taught me this, and this is something I've taken with me everywhere, is I periodize around the games, and this is where it comes down to the relationship I've got with the athlete and the relationship I've got with a coach. So this was when I was at Leeds Rhinos, but we would ultimately look at the full season calendar and kind of say, right, where can we get some really good training opportunities in? Where do we then maybe need to take a step back off because we've got a run of, Thursday night, Wednesday night, whatever the game, we've got a lot of games in a short amount of time. Or it comes down to as well the intensity of the games that we're going to be playing. And I know this is quite bad. Well, I think it's quite bad, but athletes know the games where they can maybe be at 70%, and they know the games where they need to be at 100%. So ultimately, we'll look at the calendar and say, right, we know we can be at 70% that week and potentially be okay. So let's push the needle, move the needle in the gym that week. The week after, we're playing best team in the league. Okay, we're going to take a step back that week and make sure that the athletes are at 100% readiness for the Saturday. So that's how I look at it. Maybe a bit different to what other people look at.
There you just kind of, it's like long-term strategy, isn't it? It's looking at the long term and being like, okay, if we really want to push forward and have the last game of the year being our best, and really kind of going through, I think that makes sense. And it just becomes that little bit of you've got to look at the facts, you've got to weigh up the risk, you've got to weigh up the reward. And I've definitely tried to do that in the past, and it certainly it has failed in the past as well. I'm not gonna say it always works. Sometimes we do fuck up as coaches, and we have to kind of roll through and make the most of it.
Yeah. So that's, from an in-season perspective, that's just something I've carried me together because, as a very young coach, and you're fresh out of university, it's the typical, 3-1, 3-1 like that, and then trying to then translate that into an actual season, it's just never going to happen. When I was at Yorkshire Cricket, Ian Fisher, the SSC there, literally said to me, he was like, when you get into season, it's a little bit like holding on for dear life. Yeah. And just hoping that you get through it at times, especially in cricket. And then Ben Jones really taught me that kind of fluidity in terms of, with seeing the opportunities with your programming. In terms of off-season and pre-season, off-season is difficult, I guess, from a team perspective, depending on how much contact time you've got. Obviously, I'm in a different position where we can kind of train through that off-season into pre-season. But again, it comes down to the specific goal. But it would be time off, accumulation, and then really start moving the needle forward and getting as much intense work that we can before the season starts.
Yeah. That's sick. That's sick. And then I want to go back to what you said before then. Recovery and regen, where is that kind of sitting for you and your guys? Do you always have a bit in, or is it a little bit more freelance?
So when they've got their rest days programmed within their program, we will say to them, right, we still want you to hit, X amount of steps, nutrition stays the same, hydration stays the same. It then comes down to a very individualized approach in terms of the targeted recovery and regen that we do. So I'm a big believer in if it works for you, then it works. So to an extent, some of my athletes really like kind of like hot and cold therapy. So it's okay, right, well, let's do that on the Wednesday or the Friday or whatever. Some of them really like active recovery. Some of them like doing nothing. So that's where for me it becomes very like athlete led from a recovery and regen point of view, because athletes know better than themselves how they feel. So I kind of let them lead that. But it comes down to strategy, and that's the same with nutrition and how we operate. Is we don't give set nutrition plans. We don't give set recovery and regeneration plans. I always say the same as like, obviously I've got a little girl, I'm trying to teach her how to brush her teeth. The way I'm teaching her to do it is that if she doesn't do it, her teeth are going to fall out. So it's the same thing with the athletes. Is like, look, this is what you should do. There's your information. Take that as you will, type thing.
It's interesting, mate. I think just going back to, you mentioned physios earlier, and what I've kind of found, one from an online perspective, but also working with people face to face as well, is there seems to be a little bit of apprehension behind going to a physio. At least what I've found, somebody comes to you on a Thursday, rugby lad, and says, "Oh, I've hurt my shoulder," and you're like, "Okay, well that tells me absolutely nothing. You've got a lot of things going on in the shoulder. I need you to go see somebody to find out what the actual problem is, so that we can actually prescribe something targeted to make it better." Yeah, I'll see how it goes. I'm like, fucking, that could be 3 weeks that we kind of waste, of you just kind of muddling through your training program. And I don't know if you find this either. I feel like I'm getting better with the education standpoint of explaining that. But also, sometimes the funds are a little bit tight. Obviously it's not super cheap. You might pay, I don't know, 45 quid for a 45-minute physio session. It's not always feasible.
Yeah. I think people are scared of the truth. Athletes are scared to find out, what's the actual problem, because they're then potentially scared of being told they've then got to do nothing for 4, 8, 12 weeks. It does come down to an education standpoint. I try and have really good relationships with, where I can, with the physios of the clubs that of the athletes I work with. So he doesn't work with me anymore, but I used to have a guy that had hamstring issues all the time. So me and his physio had a very strong relationship over WhatsApp in terms of how we structure his program together. And it's a really interesting approach, because you're always, being in a performance environment, you're just a part of that multidisciplinary team every single day. But then work with another, let's say, contractor or someone who's self-employed is a weird dynamic. But I think that a lot of online coaches and self-employed coaches should probably bite the bullet a little bit more and be like, okay, I should have that relationship with their nutritionist or their physio, rather than being like, I'll do it, because ultimately the physio knows better, the nutritionist knows better. So.
It is. It's kind of a little bit of an ego and a pride thing, isn't it? And you see that when you're in MDTs anyway, multidisciplinary teams at a club, is sometimes it is obvious that people have egos, and there's definitely biases that go on behind the scenes that affects, you not wanting to go to a physio and speak to them because they're going to pull them out, and it really becomes about managing people, and that's probably the hardest thing about our job is people management, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, it's something that I think is important, not necessarily important, but valuable for athletes to be on both sides of it coaches to be on both sides from a team perspective and an individual perspective. Because like I said earlier, I've learned so much about people management being as part of a team. And I've learned that, to be honest with you, from coaches that are a lot better than me, and seeing kind of how they operate. And then from an individual standpoint of how to deal with that individual where you've not got that face-to-face contact, you've got to build that relationship in different ways. I think it's really valuable for coaches to explore both sides of that, especially in those early development years, postmasters, etc.
Absolutely. I think, again, I always like being honest about these types of things, but early on in the S&C career, I guess you could say, when I'm kind of learning the craft, it just wasn't really a thing with some of the coaches that were teaching us, like mentors and that. They didn't push that MDT. They didn't push trying to get around the coach and the athletes and getting into essentially their environment, their habitat. And I always felt like that was an area that, if that was pushed on me a little bit sooner, like you need to get around the sport, get around the coach, get around the physio, I think we'd be so much further along, or at least I'd be further along in terms of my development. I don't know if that was something you experienced or was yours completely different.
So my master's actually had a multidisciplinary module, which was quite interesting. So we had nutritionists, physios, sports coaches come in and look at their perspective of S&C and how they see it fits within the mould. But then one of the things that taught me a lot was when I was at Rhinos is that, so I was head of women's S&C and we had a very small team. So there was head coach, team manager, physio, me, a couple of assistant coaches, and that was it. And I got a lot around, like I said, Adam Cuthbertson, who was one of the players at Rhinos, but then he was the women's head coach. And seeing how he operated, I took a lot from that. The way his tone, even like things like tone of voice, the way he spoke to athletes, and spending time with him away from the team as well, and kind of like listening to his thoughts on sport in general, was really valuable for me. I think it's a little bit harder when you're part of a bigger team, let's say, and then maybe the head coach is on maybe a little bit more of a pedestal than the experience that I had with Cuthbo when I was at Rhinos. So I had quite a good experience in that way. It's another one as well, actually. It was when I was at Yorkshire Cricket as an intern. I was really lucky to spend a lot of time with like the head coaches there. So we would have, like, let's say before a county match, we'd have breakfast as a coaching club. So that was like Jason Gillespie, Fish, Koo, who were the S&C and physio at the time. So someone like Jason Gillespie, again, listened to like his thoughts on certain things was a lot that I took away from. And I was quite lucky with him and the S&C coaches there, and kind of like how to present myself as a coach. And that was an internship, and they hold me really accountable, not just on like go and do this S&C session, but how I presented myself. So I can remember one day I was, the first team of coaching, and I was like 21 years old, and I was leaning on the wall, and Dizzy walked past me and grabbed me by this and like pulled me just like up a little bit, and he was like, "Don't lean on the wall." Just like little things like that, where I've been quite lucky along the way with the coaches that I've worked with. So yeah.
But that stuff is so beneficial, mate, from a young coach. And I've definitely had situations like that as well. Just like body language not being great, and potentially some of the language I've used or tone of voice and how you speak to certain people, is I've had some of those things pulled up as well. And I'm like, at the time, it could be the worst thing that's ever happened to you. It's like heartbreaking. Yeah. Like you've upset your parent. It's like, it's bad. But then it is so powerful because you think, no, actually, yeah, I need to be better than this. And I've pulled people up on that as well, and it always, I think I've got better at the feedback stuff, but it does feel like, fuck, I hope you don't take that too much to heart. But it ultimately comes with, is his best interest in mind, isn't it? When you do those types of things. Yeah,
it's an art at the end of the day, isn't it, coaching? And again, maybe this is something that's maybe not taught as much. And I know like the likes of like Brett Bartholomew talks about it a lot and stuff now, but from like a master's perspective, I don't think we're taught how to coach. You're just told to go out and get the experience. And then you're either really lucky with your experience or you're not. So we all know what it's like in some internships. You're there just to be another coach, and you just kind of throw in the deep end, which to some extent might work. But the actual like art of coaching is something that maybe should be taught a little bit more.
I agree, mate. I absolutely agree. Cool. Right. I want to thank you for your time, mate. I'm going to wrap things up a little bit. Absolutely sick. I really enjoyed that. I know there's going to be loads of takeaways for people. Where can people find you if they don't know where you are already?
So Instagram's where I'm loudest. So that's just at Coach Danny Speirs. And then other than that, the website is rugbyperformance.online. But if anyone wants to reach out, then it's just Instagram's the best place to grab me. So.
Love it. Cool. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes below, mate, so people can just click and I'll do the heavy lifting for them. But yeah, just want to thank you again, mate, and I hope you have a good day.
Yeah, you too, mate. Really enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Adapt Performance podcast. Let me know what you thought about the episode by leaving a review or sending me a direct message. I'm all for receiving the honest feedback to make sure the episodes grow and get better and better. Like, share, subscribing and following all goes a long way to making sure the podcast reaches the right people. Thanks a lot. Catch you next time.